Alright, so we're gonna break down Walter White's intelligence across different categories and give him scores for each one. Because Walt is obviously smart, like that's the whole foundation of his character. But he's not smart in every way. Some areas he's basically a genius, and other areas he's shockingly bad. We're gonna go through each type of intelligence, explain how Walt measures up, give him a score out of 10, and use examples from the show. By the end, we'll have a complete picture of what makes Walt's brain work the way it does. Let's get into it. Strategic intelligence. 10 Walt's strategic thinking is basically flawless. This is the category where he's operating at genuine genius level. Strategic intelligence is about thinking multiple steps ahead, anticipating how people will react, planning for contingencies, adapting when circumstances change. It's chess thinking applied to real-life situations, and Walt is a grandmaster at this. From the very beginning, even when he's new to the drug game, Walt is thinking strategically. When he and Jesse are trapped in the RV with Crazy 8 and Emilio, Walt doesn't panic and try to fight his way out. He uses chemistry. He creates phosphine gas that knocks them out. That's strategic thinking under pressure. But Walt really hits his stride strategically in the later seasons. The whole plot to kill Gus is this elaborate multi-layered strategy. Walt can't get to Gus directly because Gus is too careful. So Walt has to manipulate Hector Salamanca, the one person who hates Gus enough to be a suicide bomber. Walt has to anticipate how Gus will react to the threat, position himself at the hospital, get the bomb planted, all while making sure the police don't catch on. And it works. Walt kills one of the most careful and paranoid lords in the Southwest because Walt thought 10 steps ahead. In Season 5, Walt is constantly outmaneuvering people. He sets up Mike's guys to get killed in prison simultaneously. He manipulates Todd's uncle into doing hits for him. He predicts how Jesse will react to certain information and uses that to control him. The thing about strategic intelligence is it's not just about making plans, it's about adapting when plans fail. And Walt is incredible at improvisation within his strategies. When things go sideways, Walt adjusts on the fly and finds new angles. Score: 10 out of 10. Walt's strategic thinking is nearly flawless throughout the series. This is his strongest category. Creative intelligence: 9. Creative intelligence is about innovative thinking, finding novel solutions, applying knowledge in unexpected ways, and Walt's got this in spades, mostly through his chemistry. The blue meth is the obvious example. Walt doesn't just cook meth the way everyone else does. He innovates on the process and creates a product that's purer and more distinctive than anything else on the market. That's applied creativity. He's taking his academic chemistry knowledge and using it in ways that weren't in any textbook. But Walt's creativity shows up in other situations too. Remember that scene early on where Tuco is threatening Walt, and Walt pulls out that crystal that looks like meth but is actually fulminated mercury. He throws it on the ground and it explodes, blowing out Tuco's windows. That's creative problem solving. Walt used his chemistry knowledge to create a weapon out of materials he had on hand, or the train heist in Season 5. That whole plan where they drain methylamine out of a moving train using magnets and pumps, that's creative engineering. Walt's taking theoretical knowledge and applying it to this absurd criminal scenario. His mobile meth lab that he and Jesse drive around in the RV in Season 1 is creative. The Fly episode where Walt becomes obsessed with contamination shows his creative thinking about purity and process. Even the way he launders money through the car wash shows business creativity. The only reason Walt doesn't get a perfect 10 here is that his creativity is somewhat limited to his area of expertise. He's incredibly creative with chemistry and anything science related, but in other areas, he's more conventional. Still, 9 out of 10 is exceptional. Social intelligence: 6. Social intelligence is about reading people, understanding emotions, navigating social dynamics, building genuine relationships. And this is where Walt starts to show some serious weaknesses. Walt can put on a performance when he needs to. He can play the mild-mannered teacher, the concerned husband, the helpless cancer patient. He's got different masks for different situations, but genuine social intelligence, like actually understanding what people are feeling and responding to it appropriately, Walt's pretty bad at that. Look at his relationship with Skylar. Walt consistently misreads what Skylar needs or wants. He thinks throwing money at problems will fix their marriage. He doesn't understand why Skylar's terrified of him even when she's basically spelling it out. He's so focused on his own perspective that he can't genuinely see hers. With Walt Jr., same thing. Walt wants his son to admire him and see him as strong, but he doesn't understand that what Walt Jr. actually needs is honesty and stability. Walt's so caught up in maintaining his image that he can't connect authentically with his own son. Even with Jesse, where Walt actually does understand some of Jesse's vulnerabilities, Walt uses that understanding to manipulate rather than to build a genuine relationship. Walt knows Jesse needs approval and validation, but instead of actually providing that in a healthy way, Walt exploits it. The thing about Walt's social intelligence is it's entirely utilitarian. He reads people well enough to use them, but he doesn't connect with them. He doesn't build real relationships based on mutual understanding and respect. There are moments where Walt shows flashes of genuine social awareness, like when he buys Walt Jr. that fancy car and you can see he genuinely thinks this will make his son happy. Walt's not trying to manipulate there, he just has terrible judgment about what actual connection looks like. Score, 6 out of 10. Walt's adequate at social manipulation, but terrible at authentic human connection. Manipulative intelligence, 10. If strategic intelligence is Walt's strongest category, manipulative intelligence is right there with it. Walt is an absolute master manipulator. Manipulative intelligence is about understanding people's vulnerabilities and leveraging them. It's about getting people to do what you want while making them think it was their idea. And Walt is scary good at this. Jesse is Walt's primary manipulation victim throughout the series. Walt keeps Jesse under control through this cycle of building him up and tearing him down. Walt tells Jesse he's capable and talented, which Jesse desperately wants to hear. Then when Jesse steps out of line, Walt reminds him of his failures and makes him feel worthless. And the manipulation is so subtle that Jesse doesn't even see it happening. When Walt lets Jane die, he positions himself as the person who helps Jesse through his grief. Jesse doesn't realize Walt caused the thing he's grieving. That's next level manipulation. With Skylar, Walt manipulates through playing victim. When Skylar confronts him about his lies, Walt acts hurt and confused. He makes her feel guilty for doubting him. He uses her love for the family against her constantly. Saul gets manipulated through a combination of money and veiled threats. Walt makes Saul feel like they're partners while making it clear that Saul doesn't really have a choice about helping him. Even Gus, who's extremely smart and careful, gets manipulated by Walt. Walt plays on Gus's need for the perfect product and his rivalry with the cartel. Walt positions himself as indispensable and then uses that position to orchestrate Gus's death. The thing that makes Walt's manipulative intelligence so high is that he can adapt his manipulation to different people. He knows exactly which buttons to push with each person. With Jesse, it's approval. With Skylar, it's family. With Saul, it's money and fear. Walt's like a manipulation chameleon. Score, 10 out of 10. Walt is a master manipulator operating at the highest level. Practical or survival intelligence, 8. Practical intelligence is about surviving in the real world, adapting to circumstances, being resourceful under pressure. And Walt's pretty strong here, but not perfect. When he's about to be killed by Gus's men, Walt finds a way to force Jesse to kill Gale and make himself essential again. When he's trapped by Jack's gang at the end, Walt builds an automated machine gun in his car trunk. Walt is incredibly resourceful with limited materials. The whole RV meth lab setup is improvised resourcefulness. Using a junkyard magnet to destroy evidence in the police station, that's practical problem solving. But Walt's survival intelligence has a major flaw, and that's his pride. Walt makes decisions that put him in danger purely because his ego can't handle backing down. When Walt refuses to just take Gretchen and Elliot's money to pay for his cancer treatment, that would have been the practical solution. But Walt's pride wouldn't allow it, so he had to cook meth instead. His ego literally created all his survival problems. Still, the fact that Walt survived 5 seasons of increasingly dangerous situations shows he's got strong practical intelligence. He just trips over his own pride occasionally. Score, 8 out of 10. Very strong survival instincts undermined occasionally by pride. Analytical intelligence, 10. Analytical intelligence is about breaking down complex problems into components, identifying patterns, logical reasoning, systematic thinkings. This is Walt's bread and butter as a chemist. Walt's analytical mind is what makes his chemistry so good. He can look at a molecular structure and understand how to manipulate it. He can identify impurities in a compound by analyzing its properties. That level of analytical thinking is what produces the 99.1% pure meth. But Walt's analytical intelligence extends beyond chemistry. He analyzes people like chemical equations. He breaks down their motivations into component parts and figures out how to influence them. When Walt needs to figure out how to kill Gus, he doesn't just rely on opportunity. He analyzes the situation. Who does Gus trust? What are Gus's patterns? What vulnerabilities exist? Walt breaks down this seemingly impossible problem into solvable pieces. Even the way Walt plans heists and operations shows Analytical thinking. The train robbery isn't just steal the methylamine. It's calculating weights and volumes, timing the drain rate, coordinating the team's movements. Everything is analyzed and optimized. Walt's also good at analyzing risk versus reward. He understands probability and how to calculate whether something is worth attempting. When he decides to kill Gus using Hector as a bomber, that's an analytical risk assessment. High risk, but the only option with a reasonable chance of success. The reason Walt gets a perfect score here is that his analytical intelligence never really fails him throughout the series. When Walt makes mistakes, it's because of emotion or ego, not because his analysis was wrong. His analytical mind is consistently razor sharp. Score 10 out of 10. Walt's analytical intelligence is absolutely top tier. Emotional intelligence 5 out of 10. Emotional intelligence is about understanding emotions in yourself and others, managing feelings appropriately, empathy, self-awareness. And Walt is pretty terrible at most of this. Walt understands his own emotions to some degree. He knows he's angry about grey matter. He knows he resents being seen as weak. He's aware of his pride even if he can't control it. But understanding emotions and managing them healthily are different things. Walt's emotions control him way more than he controls them. His pride makes him do stupid things constantly. His need for recognition drives him to keep cooking even when he has enough money. His ego won't let him back down even when backing down is the smart move. As for understanding other people's emotions, Walt is selective about it. He can identify emotions when he wants to manipulate them. He knows Jesse feels guilty, so he can exploit that guilt. He knows Skylar is afraid, so he can leverage that fear. But genuine empathy, actually feeling what someone else is feeling and caring about it, Walt doesn't really do that. When Skylar is crying and begging him to stop, Walt doesn't feel her fear. He just sees it as an obstacle to what he wants. There are rare moments where Walt shows actual emotional awareness. When he's crying while killing Crazy 8, that seems like genuine emotional processing. When he watches Jane die, you can see conflict on his face even as he chooses not to save her. But mostly, Walt is emotionally tone deaf. He can fake emotional responses when it suits him. He can cry on command to manipulate sympathy, but authentic emotional intelligence, the kind that builds real relationships and allows for growth. Walt doesn't have much of that. Score 5 out of 10. Manipulative emotional skills, but terrible authentic emotional awareness. Street/criminal intelligence 8 out of 10. Street intelligence is about understanding how the criminal world works, navigating that culture, making the right moves in dangerous situations, and Walt, despite starting as a total outsider, gets pretty good at this. When Walt first enters the trade, he's hilariously naive. He thinks you can just cook meth and sell it like it's a normal business transaction. He doesn't understand territory, respect, reputation, any of the actual dynamics. But Walt learns fast. He figures out that reputation matters in the criminal world. That's why he cultivates the Heisenberg persona. He understands that fear is currency on the street. Walt learns how to negotiate with dangerous people. When he's dealing with Tuco or Gus or later with Jack's gang, Walt knows how to position himself. He knows when to show strength, when to show humility, when to make offers. He also gets good at understanding criminal logistics. How do you move product? How do you launder money? How do you avoid law enforcement? Walt figures all this out despite having zero experience. But Walt's street intelligence has gaps. He sometimes underestimates people who seem less educated than him. He thinks because he's smarter academically, he's smarter period. That's the academic ego blinding him to practical street knowledge other people have. Like with Crazy 8 early on, Walt almost gets killed because he assumes he can just talk his way out of it. Or with Jesse's friends in the early seasons, Walt dismisses them as dumb addicts when some of them actually have better street survival instincts than Walt does. Walt also occasionally makes moves that someone with genuine street background would know are stupid, like keeping that copy of Leaves of Grass that has an inscription from Gale. That's terrible criminal tradecraft. A real street criminal would have burned that immediately. Still, the fact that Walt survives in the drug world for as long as he does shows he's got solid street intelligence. He just had to learn it on the job instead of growing up with it. Score 8 out of 10. Impressively smart for someone who came from the academic world, but occasional blind spots. So if we average out all these scores, Walt comes out to about an 8.2 out of 10 overall. But that number doesn't really capture what makes Walt's intelligence interesting. What makes Walt fascinating is the huge variance in his abilities. He's got perfect 10s in strategic thinking, manipulation, and analytical reasoning. But he's got 5s and 6s in emotional and social intelligence. He's not consistently smart across the board. He's extremely smart in specific ways and almost dumb in others. and that makes sense for his character. Walt's a chemistry teacher who got into crime. Of course, his analytical and strategic thinking are excellent. That's what you develop spending years teaching and researching. But emotional intelligence and genuine social skills, those aren't required for success in academia. You can be a brilliant scientist and a terrible human being at the same time. What's tragic about Walt is that his weakest areas are the ones that matter most for the things he claims to care about. He says he's doing everything for his family, but his low emotional and social intelligence means he's terrible at actually maintaining family relationships. His manipulation skills work great for controlling criminal operations, but destroy his marriage and his relationship with his kids. Alright, let me know in the comments if you think I scored any of these categories wrong. I know some people might say Walt deserves higher in social intelligence or lower in survival intelligence. There's definitely room for debate on most of these. That's what makes character analysis fun. Everyone's got their own perspective on what these traits mean and how to measure them.